From the banks of the Allegheny, welcome to Film Bits. Oh, here we go. Let's not build it up. We last left off, Llewellyn Moss dead, the money gone, Ed Tom trying to put two and two together and facing his very fears as he goes back to the scene of the crime. Let's do it. Shadows being projected by his headlights. And then he notices, oh heck, that lock has been punched. Great acting. He knows what's going on. Oh, and Chigurh, half in darkness, half in light. That's important. Tom is wrestling. He knows Chigurh is there, and he knows Chigurh probably is waiting. Second time we've seen him draw that gun. Shadows. Now, if you are wondering, wait a second, based on the way that was edited and cut, Chigurh should be behind that door. And then Ed Tom opens that door, and Chigurh is not there. Let's keep rolling. Shadows. Moss's bloodstain. Shadows. Doesn't seem to be anyone in here. Point of view shot coming. Close up of the locked window. Ed Tom has searched the room, and Chigurh is not there. Let's have a chat. So, why was he there? Why did we see him? Well, the importance of his being lit only halfway is the key here. That lighting lets us know, if we dig in deep enough, lets us know that there's a lot of illusion going on here. The shadows of Ed Tom on the wall do it, and the fact that we could only half see Chigurh, and we could even argue some echoes back to the reflection in the TV set. The reason Chigurh is only lit halfway and not fully is because he's not there. Not at all. He's not fast enough to have run under the bed or run out the window real quick. That's why we get the extreme close-up shot on the window lock being locked. That lets us know that he did not escape. He's nowhere in that room. There's no other reason for the Coens to include that shot except to show us that he was never there, or not never there, but that he was not currently there. Because they know the doubt they've introduced to us. They've done it intentionally. They know the audience is thinking, oh my God, Chigurh is in the room. And then all of a sudden he's not. Ed Tom takes a long time, and Tommy Lee Jones does some great silent acting. Wrestling, coming to the decision, am I going to finally be proactive? Am I going to finally do something heroic? And he does. This is probably the high moment of Ed Tom in the movie thus far. He says, yeah, I'm a cop. I know that this guy's been here. I got to go in the door. And so that image of Chigurh that we see, that is Ed Tom's imagination. When he sees that lock punched out, he imagines, and he has never seen Chigurh. Think about that. He has never seen Chigurh. So we get the shot of Chigurh because we know what Chigurh looks like, so that we know what Ed Tom is imagining. He doesn't even know what this guy looks like. He just knows there's a killer who likes to punch locks out with that cow killing gun. So he flings the door open, and boom, no Chigurh. And we as the audience might be a little stunned. Now let's examine these shadows a little bit, okay? Now let's go examine the shadows. We can look at these shadows a few different ways. Here's the track I'm going to take for this. Number one, they project Ed to be way larger than life, hugely larger than life. The shadow of the man that a Western hero should be. But Ed is truly just a shadow of that man. So the way I read this is the shadows show us how he should behave as a hero, but he's not, and thus the phrasing, a shadow of himself. He is, when we think of the Western genre and the trope of the Western hero, he is a shadow of that. And on top of all of that, when he flings the door open, he stands in that doorway. I'm going to drop a picture right here. This is a very famous shot from an early John Wayne Western called The Searchers. It's one of the big John Wayne films, and he's a big-time hero, butt kicker, one of those films that he made his name on. Look at the similarity in these shots. They are not exact, but they are similar. I would argue that the Coens composed this shot thinking of the shot of Wayne and the Strangers and kind of juxtaposing the two to lay Ed Tom Bell and John Wayne together. Ed Tom, who is in the midst of finally doing something heroic, who has been a shadow of himself this entire time, finally doing something heroic. John Wayne, the prototypical Western hero, and there's lots of other stuff we could do there, but I think that's enough. I'd be very interested if you guys had takes to share them with me in the comments of what some of this might mean. Now, we're not quite done with Ed Tom in this room yet, because he's going to see something that we already know. A little dramatic irony. We're going to know what he sees, which he doesn't quite know what he's seeing. Let's pick it back up. Oh, open little slot there. Extreme close-up coming. A coin and some screws. Now we have a crossfade, which the Coens have not employed yet. We crossfade transition into the new scene. Another long, important scene. The man sitting in the wheelchair is named Ellis, and he's got a thick accent. I'm hoping you can understand him.
How'd you know I was here?
Well,
I'm gonna let this.
Driving up your truck.
You heard it?
How's that?
Did you hear me? You're having fun with me.
I'd give you that idea. I seen one of the cats heard it.
How'd you know it was my truck?
I deduced it when you walked in.
How many of them things you got now?
I'm gonna let this play and talk
I
later.
don't know, several. Well, it depends on what you mean by got. Some of them are half wild, some of them are just outlaws.
I love that phrase.
How you been, Ellis?
I like this too.
You're looking at it. I got to
You're
say,
looking at it.
you're looking older.
I am older.
Two more old
Got a letter
men.
from your wife. She writes me pretty regular, keeps me up on the family news.
Didn't know there was any.
Told me you're quitting.
You want a cup?
Appreciate it.
Get that wind blowing. This house in the middle of nowhere,
How
seemingly.
fresh is that coffee?
How fresh is that coffee?
Fresh pot every week, even if there's some left over.
That
So the
man
guy that
shot
put him in the
you
wheelchair.
died in prison.
It's an Angola prison in Louisiana, one of the most
Angola.
notorious prisons out there.
Yeah.
And Ed Tom asks him what he would have done if he had been released.
Oh, I don't know. Nothing. Wouldn't be no point in it.
Kind of surprised to hear you say that.
Well, all the time you spend trying to get back what's been took from you, more is going out the door. After a while, you just have to try to get
Great
a target
dialogue.
on it. Your granddad never asked me to sign on as a deputy. Loretta tells me you're quitting. How come you're doing that?
I don't know. I feel overmatched.
I feel overmatched.
I always figured when I got older, God would sort of come into my life somehow. And he didn't.
Interesting that Ed's at profile here, like he cannot make eye contact with Ellis
I have the same opinion of me, and he does.
at this moment in time.
I don't know what he thinks.
And he finally settles that, gets the coffee, and is able to face him. The business of him quitting now out in the open.
I sent Uncle Max Thumbbuster and badge over to the Rangers.
Thumbbuster's a gun.
In their museum. Daddy ever tell you how Uncle Mac come to his reward? Gunned down on his own porch over in Hudspeth County. 7 or 8 of them come up there. Oh, wanting this, wanting that. Uncle Mac went back in the house to get the shot.
Slow push, just like that, just like the Coens did in the gas station. Very slow push in.
Aunt Ella come out.
Tells you that what he's saying is important, significant.
All the while trying to get that shotgun. They just sat there on their horses.
Push in on Ed too.
After a while, one of them said something in Indian, and they turned,
Keep pushing.
left out. Uncle Mac knew the score, even if Aunt Ella didn't. Shot through the left lung. And that was that, as they say.
When did he die?
1909.
No, I mean, was it right away or in the night, or when was it?
I believe it was that night. She buried him the next morning, digging in that hard old caliche. What you got ain't nothing new. This country's hard on people. You can't stop what's coming. It ain't all waiting on you. That's vanity.
And that's where we will end today's episode. But I got a lot to say here. All right. So again, another one of these great bit parts with a little more dialogue in the character of Ellis. They are related through family. He has gotten word from Ed Tom's wife that Ed Tom is retiring because he's overmatched. And he is religious, but he thinks God has let him down. And Ellis is trying to urge him back into the force and tell him, why are you retiring? And this is kind of interesting. Let's juxtapose Ed Tom's last conversation with an old man to Ed Tom's current conversation with an old man. The last old man, that other sheriff in El Paso, they were kind of buddy-buddy as far as like they both thought the same way philosophically. Ed Tom gets to Ellis, and Ellis isn't going to give him that. And that's why we get the old anecdote about Uncle Mac and him dying and the Indians that had pulled up and shot him dead, and his wife had to bury him in that hard earth. Ellis says, what you got ain't nothing new. In other words, this has been going on since time immemorial. Just because you feel you're overmatched, your uncle was overmatched, he wound up dying as a result, but he didn't back down. He didn't give up. And that's a huge message from Ellis as he's trying to insult, goad, cajole Ed Tom into staying a sheriff. What you got ain't nothing different. So while Ed Tom is sitting there saying, I can't understand this kind of crime, and the other old sheriff, and how do you defend against it? These guys who have no country for old men, right? They just throw up their hands. Maybe they're long gone. And then Ellis says something very interesting. He doesn't say that there's no country for old men. He says this country is hard on people. Meaning, if you can be hard back, you can survive, but it takes a special sort. Like the uncle, who even when he was surrounded and shot down and gunned down in his porch, well, he was a lawman to the end and fighting to the end. And so Ellis gives him the dose of reality there at the very end. What you got ain't nothing new. You can't stop what's coming. They all aren't waiting on you. That's vanity. Trying to shake Ed Tom out of this morass and get him to start thinking straight. And all of this coming from a man who was shot while he was a lawman and crippled and put into a wheelchair. I just love this scene so much, and I love the character of Ellis. And he's a wonderful counterpoint to show that Ed Tom has some serious weakness. And if he's supposed to be our hero, he's not a strong hero. He's not a John Wayne. He has very real problems, which is what makes him so identifiable with the audience, and very real concerns. And he has hit this point in his life where he feels he's just not good at his job anymore, and he's got to step aside. All right. We've got one, maybe 2 parts left, and then we have completed No Country. I hope you've watched this whole thing, and I hope you'll stick around for the last 2. We will see you very soon. Bye-bye.